What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Touchdown with Doug Smith. Now, in this episode, you're going to want to stick by because I just banged out the whole last season of Last Chance University in 2 days. So we're going to talk about that. It's going to be my heartfelt review. One of my favorite shows as well, too. However, lots of spoiler alerts ahead. With that being said, let's start the show.
You are now tuned in to The Touchdown with Doug Smith.
The touchdown.
Now, for those who haven't watched Last Chance University, it's a show where you have JUCO. Now, for those who don't know what JUCO is, that's junior college for football players, and these are schools for guys who weren't able to make it into Division II, Division I AA, or even Division 1A schools. Okay. Now, in the past, they've covered schools in Independence over in Kansas. They've covered schools for Mississippi. And also as well, they ended up this season covering their third and final school, which is Laney Community College in Oakland, California, okay? Now, this is very different because in the past, they've been in more rural environments, places where there's, more cows than people sometimes, This last season in Oakland was really cool because they ended up covering not only the players, but they also covered other issues that currently go on in Oakland to this day. Things from gentrification, police brutality, the traffic. I mean, you have some players who drive 2 hours to practice every day. Then they have to make it back home. They talked about the homelessness problem. Now, just as with previous seasons in the past, they did have a select number of players and, of course, head football coach, Coach Beam, that they end up following, okay? Now, in the past, I wasn't too crazy about some of the coaches. I'm going to be honest with you. But Coach Beam, he's been coaching for 40 years, since 1979. He has never left Oakland. He's had offers to go be a coordinator for Division I schools, but his heart is centered in Oakland, California. He loves that town. Pretty much the unofficial mayor of Oakland. Everybody knows Coach Beam. But what I will take and say is that, with Coach Beam, he's at a point in his life where he's nearing towards retirement, okay? And then also as well, he's coming off a state championship, 2018, because they filmed from last year, 2019, but 2018, they ended up winning the state championship, which was really, really cool. What's crazy is that D.R. Walker-Scott, not only did he end up getting the quarterback position, but he thrived. He did pretty good. He was relatively pretty accurate. He was mobile. Their O-line was okay, so it did require that quarterback to have a pretty quick release, but he was able to get a couple W's. Plus, he played quarterback in high school. However, currently a receiver. So throughout the course of the season, in the whole, not only season 5, but the football season as well too, he ended up playing wide receiver, also played quarterback as well too, okay? Now, his situation was really unique is because he had a full-time job. I believe he's working at a pizza place, I believe it was. And when he was working there, he was homeless. He was sleeping in his car. What was interesting is that, Oakland, that the Bay Area is thriving as far as the economy. However, the place has now become too expensive for a lot of the locals living there, okay? You have Silicon Valley not too far from there. It's just very, very expensive place to live. And if you're a young college student trying to make it, not everybody could take and afford or even make it on campus. So hence you have D.R. Walker-Scott. Now, to add things to the mix, he has car problems. He has car problems as well. And he has issues with his father, okay? Now, the issues he has with his father is that his father was very abusive to him. And his father does come on the show. He does show up to his football games. But D.R. Walker-Scott wants absolutely nothing, nothing whatsoever to do with him. To the point where D.R. Walker-Scott, his dad, being an ex-vet, actually, he's able to get free college for his son for any California state school that he wants to go to. And towards the end of the season, D.R. Walker-Scott, he ends up getting a few looks from a few schools, but nothing really quite concrete, okay? However, towards the end of the season, it's really great because he ends up walking on over at University of Hawaii. At the end of the day, he wanted absolutely nothing to do with California. Oakland, California, they love Oakland, and it's not just D.R. Walker-Scott, it's Rez John, it's RJ, everybody wants to get out of California. So not only do these guys, they're coming from, it shows the perspective of a football player who comes from a place of hunger, sometimes homelessness, abuse, fatherlessness or motherlessness. There's a lot of issues that these young men have in this show. So to take and see that perspective was really, really great. Now, the next player I want to take and talk about is Nu'u Tagavau. Now, please forgive me if I'm saying his name wrong, but according to online, that's what pronunciations are. But Nu'u Tagovailoa, I mean, he is, as far as all the players in the show, I probably connected with him the most. Now, I used to play college football. I also got married in college as well, too, and had my first child on the way as well, too. Now, with him, he was already ahead of the game. This guy takes and comes out the gate. He's married with twins already. And on top of that, his wife is going to nail school at the same time. Now, Nu'u, just like Dior Walker-Scott, you know, he also has issues with his father. His father is a recovering drug addict and also was in and out of prison. So really wasn't in his life that much. So he has that going against him. Also as well, he gets horrible, horrible grades. He ends up getting caught in one of the episodes, ends up taking and getting caught plagiarizing on one of his papers. So kind of a knucklehead, but physically an amazing specimen. I mean, he is 6'2", 300 pounds. I mean, the guy brings it, and he's an offensive tackle. So I think out of all the players, I mean, if the issue with him is that he wanted to be a football player and all the things that come with it, but he didn't want to put in the hard work. And you could tell, you know, there's something deep inside of him, and I'm really hoping for the best for him, but something deep inside of him that really wants something maybe more than the game of football has to ultimately give. Something deep inside of him that really he wants to take and be the father that his father never was, but also as well make it big in football. So it was very, very interesting taking to see the conversations and that he would have, you know, with his wife, and his wife wanting to get also reoccurring theme, as I mentioned, get the heck out of California, okay? But his story ends up ending really, really great. He was probably the most, as far as talent-wise, consistent as far as the entire team and staying healthy and all that good stuff. We got 2 offers towards the end of the season, and also he got an offer from Alabama A&M, which I believe is a 1AA school, I believe, and then also Murray State as well too, in which he ended up committing and going there. And what was really cool is that his wife took and said to him is like, hey, we're a package deal, honey. We're a package deal. So if they take you, they need to take all of us. So it was really nice. They were able to get housing for the entire family and ultimately end up moving out to where Murray State is at. Next player I want to take and talk about is RJ Stern. Now he's 5'11", 185 pounds. Now during the course of the episode, literally up until like the last 2 episodes, Coach is riding this man. Now, they said a lot of things about RJ Stern throughout the season that I really personally disagree with. I'll be honest with you. I mean, there was time that man could get open. Probably the best receiver on the team, okay? Now, RJ Stern, he also comes from a difficult background as well, too. You know, his father was really never in his life as well, too. Mother had a lot of issues down in Texas and ended up living with his aunt and uncle over in the Bay Area, okay? But also, like everybody else, recurrent theme, everybody wants to get out of the Bay Area. But the head coach, Coach Beam, you know, this man rid this guy's tail so dang much. I felt that Coach Beam, he kind of hindered him. I'll be honest with you. Out of all the players, he was usually spot on. If you dropped a catch, he was going to ride you. If you threw an interception, he was going to ride you. But there was a lot of times where he'd be running a seam, and RJ Stern, he is a deep threat. You see that reoccurring, constantly beating the cornerbacks, constantly coming back, getting that underthrown ball. I mean, he was the man, you know. However, the problem that RJ was having is that he would oftentimes go off route and stuff like that. So, and because of that, you know, Coach, he constantly would try to get him off the team. And RJ, man, to his credit, I mean, he would not leave. He would not back down. He would take it to heart and get better every time. We ended up taking and seeing that, you know, the last 2 games of the season, the guy was balling, absolutely balling. Because of that, he ended up taking and getting a couple different offers through Southwestern Oklahoma State, Adams State, and also as well Tusculum, which is over in Middle Tennessee. Now, the next player I want to take and talk about is Rez John Wright. Now, the guy is definitely a wild card, emotionally all over the place, but definitely the most talented player on that team, okay? Now, the guy is a beast. He's 6'3", 185-pound corner, okay? He could play the deep, he could play the slot, wherever it is, the nickel, wherever you want him at, that's where Rez John will take and play. Now, he is a defensive captain for that team. Multiple times he ends up getting 1 or more interceptions every single game. On top of that, he's the #1 cornerback in all of JUCO, okay? One thing that definitely caught my eye is that the man has hurt. He has a lot of hurt. His father was unfortunately murdered a couple years ago. And then on top of that, his brother, he's over there in Oregon State, which he ends up trying to recruit him multiple times. He's like, I'm not going to no Oregon State. But it was crazy. Towards the end of the season, he ended up getting 2 offers. One of them was from UCF. And then the other one was actually at Oregon State. Now, a reoccurring theme, as I've mentioned over and over again, is that all these guys want to take and leave the Bay Area. They want to get the heck out of California, okay? But he ended up going to Oregon State to be with his brother, in which he'll be competing for a starting position as a cornerback opposite side of his brother. Now that we talked about the four main characters of the show, I want to take and get right back to Coach Beam. Now, Coach Beam, he has a plethora of players that have not only went on to D1 schools, but also as well, they went on to the NFL. Few notable names are CJ Anderson, Chuck Jacobs, Sterling Moore, and then also as well Frank Summers. Now, I know you guys know CJ Anderson. That guy was a beast for the Broncos. However, the guy has been coaching for 40 years, since 1979, and not only did he coach high school, but he also coached JUCO as well too, okay? The guy's won so many championships as well too, and I kind of felt bad for the coach because, you know, right out the gate, he's on his third string quarterback. Right out of game one, he gets injured and he's out of there. You know what I mean? Then they're looking for receivers to take in. Ultimately, who's going to be our next quarterback, in other words. So, you know, you have this introduction to the world on Netflix of who you are and all the great things you've done, and for it to start off like that. But I like this coach. Out of all the coaches that have been a part of Last Chance University, whether it be coordinators or head coaches, this by far is the most mentally stable one and the most just one as well too. Now, was he perfect? No, absolutely not. There were definitely a couple times where, specifically with RJ, I felt like he would be nitpicking, or some of the stuff that he would take and say to people, I'd be like, if I was a coach, I probably wouldn't say that, because some of these guys on the team, they come from broken homes, and because of that, they're very emotionally unstable. In other words, you know, from Rez John and his father being murdered to Walker Scott and his daddy issues as well too, and even RJ got dad issues as well. So, and then you got Nu'u, and you know, everything's a joke to him kind of thing, but the guy is physically a massive beast on the field. So he's trying to bring the most out of everybody, and you find that a lot of successful coaches, they're able to adapt and adjust to every single different type of individual on the field. But with Coach Beam, he's the same every single time. And he lets these guys know that, like, hey, if you're sucking, I'm not going to go put my name on the line and my reputation, you know, for you guys messing up to recommend you to a D1 school so they'll ultimately give you an offer. You guys have to take and show and prove. Now, from the player's perspective, one thing that I noticed is that these guys don't have dorms. They don't have dorms. At least they can't afford it, at least, you know. And Laney College, it's not like when they were doing, I think it was Mississippi Community College, seasons 3 and 4, where these guys, they had a place to live. You know what I mean? Like, they may have been poor, but they had a place to live kind of thing, you know. And almost all these players are couch surfing. They're staying with family members and relatives, or they're staying in a 2-bedroom home with 5 other roommates, and they all have to work. All while going to school, all while having to maintain your grades, and of course, be a good football player. Now, one of the guys I took and I gravitated to a lot is Dior Walker Scott, and not only does he play quarterback, does he play running back, he's very adaptable, and you see him, he's very, I want to say episodes 1 through 4, he's pretty emotionally stable for the most part. He tells you a little bit about his issue with his father, and it's messed up because his dad, he teased a girl at school, back in elementary school. His dad made him dress like a girl. You know what I mean? Kids made fun of him. He was talking too much in class, or being disruptive in class or something like that. His dad took and shaved one part of his head. Kids would make fun of him. So a lot of abuse, and you don't see the father until about halfway through the series, okay? You don't see him. He's just kind of talking about him. You're like, okay, where is this dude? Finally, then I'm showing the father, and you see that Dior, is like a cry out inside of him that he ultimately wants to take and have this relationship with his father, but he hates his freaking guts. Absolutely hates him. He comes home, and you don't really hear him even use that much profanity throughout the show, right? But Dior Walker Scott, he's going to his mom's house. Now, he does have a good relationship with his mom, but she has so many kids, like, he doesn't want to be a burden. And really, Dior is just trying to be a man. But he pulls up in his vehicle, and guess who's waiting there? His dad. And you see him go on a cussing panic, lose his freaking cool. But then we see his dad, he's like, hey, how you doing? Hey, what's up, man? Hey, how you doing, LG? You know. And it was one of those things where I was just like, man, I just want them to be cool. But then the father starts talking, and there's not much, you know, sorry in his voice. He doesn't want to have that. He wants to have a relationship with his son, but he's not being the bigger man. You know what I mean? Me personally, I'm a father. I have 2 kids, and if I mess up, I may cool my head for a sec, but I'll go right up to my kids like, hey kids, listen, I'm sorry, your dad made a mistake. But you don't take and see that with him, unfortunately. The season, you know, it's like it comes episode 6, episode 7, and then the final episode, episode 8, and they don't make amends. They don't make amends at all. You know what I mean? And ultimately, D.R. Walker Scott ends up getting what he wants, which is ultimately to get the heck out of California. And I believe he was talking to, I believe it was Boise State, which is over in Idaho, and then also Hawaii, in which he ends up going to Hawaii. Probably my top 3 favorite moment of the entire series, I definitely would have to say, is when he walks into his dorm over in Hawaii. And not only does he have a place to live, but also, well, he has a bed, and then he looks back and he takes and he smiles. And I was just like, man, I've been homeless before. It sucks, absolutely sucks. So to take and see that, man, that was definitely really, really cool. And then he takes and shows the view, and there's palm trees. You see the skyline of Honolulu, the beach in the distance, and I'm like, man, even if he ends up never going to the NFL, that guy, not only is he a grinder and a beast on the field, I don't see those characteristics ever taken and leaving him. I feel like not only does he ever want, and while I do still hope and pray that him and his father will ultimately have that mends, even if it's just like a sorry, I love you, and then maybe patch it up over the course of time. But you know, he's gonna be all right. D.R. Walker Scott is going to be all right. And another thing I want to take and talk about the show as well too is in the past 4 seasons, you know, the guidance counselors are always there, ultimately trying to help the kids stay up to par with their grades, okay? That's a reoccurring thing, and if they're trying to go to bigger schools with better opportunities, especially opportunities eventually go to NFL, you need to have the grades to ultimately do so, okay? That was a reoccurring theme, specifically with Nu'u Tagavau. However, this season is more so catered towards the guidance counselors trying to find students places to live, okay? Now that is a reoccurring issue, and housing is a major issue in the Bay Area. You have people who make $50,000, $60,000 a year, but with rent being $3,000 a month some places, a lot of these folks, they find it just more beneficial to ultimately live in their car. Another episode I want to talk about, I believe it was episode 5, is where you had the police officer where he's showing a murder scene of a pregnant woman who was killed, and also the child was killed inside her stomach as well. And he's talking about all the different issues that currently go on in the Bay Area, specifically in Oakland, okay? And that becomes a segue episode to talking about gentrification. That becomes a segue to talk about police brutality and a lot of the issues that are happening in Oakland. Now, this officer, he's really cool because he ends up going down to the school and talking about his perspective on being a police officer and how, you know, hey, police officers need to do better, but also as well how some of y'all view us need to do better, and basically everybody needs to come together and have these very difficult conversations, okay? I like this police officer too, is because there was a lot of officers that they're gung-ho and they want to be cowboys, you know, they just want to go out and F everything up, you know, like it's a dang Rush Hour movie, you know? There's a lot of pimping that goes on in the Bay Area, and he sees a woman on a street corner and the car takes and pulls up, and while they're filming, and it captures the whole thing, it's all, I believe episode 5, I believe it is 5 or 6, he takes and pulls up and he says, yo, you guys get out of here, we're not doing that, and tells the lady, he's like, and she says, I'll meet you at some fast food restaurant. He's like, no, you will not, you're gonna keep walking too, and he lets them go, you know what I mean? And it's, this officer has compassion. He wants to see the world a better place, but also he's overwhelmed with all that he has to put up with. So to see things from his perspective was also really cool. Now, as I mentioned, it also goes into a segue of protests and some of the things that are currently going on, not only in the Bay Area, but throughout the whole entire country as well, too. Now, gentrification is also something they get into, whereas they show, you know, a lot of boarded up houses, and they show where the projects is at, but on that same street, you have a 3-story building that looks like Bill Gates takes and lives there, you know, and with all kinds of tech gadgets and, you know, electric fence around and all kinds of craziness, you know. And, you know, a lot of the locals in Oakland, they don't feel like their black faces are going to really necessarily fit in the new Oakland, and they feel that, you know, white people moving in is ultimately ruining their neighborhood. Then they have the other perspective of people says, hey, you know, we're a blended community, and we can, Oakland can be for everybody kind of thing, right? They also take and show a scene where you have construction workers tearing down homeless camps, where some of these homeless camps even have 150 people in them as well too. I also touched up on traffic, on how a lot of these guys, some of them may drive an hour, some of them may drive 2 hours, but that's each way. So for example, they cover Rez John Wright, and his mom ended up getting a house in Antioch. Now I haven't looked on a map, but Antioch is roughly about 2 hours from Oakland, from Laney College. He has to do that every single day. So not only do you have school, not only do you have practice, you also have a 2-hour drive all the way home as well at the same time. But overall, y'all, I really love this season. Out of season 1, 2, 3, and 4, and dealing with, you know, having coaches who sometimes said racist things, having coaches who were absolutely abusive to their players, seeing coaches absolutely melt down, it was really, really nice to see Coach Beam generally hold it together. Well, I don't agree with a few things on how he took and gave, you know, RJ Stern, and I feel like he was always targeting him. Say one thing nice to him every now and then, you know what I mean? And RJ is a baller, you know what I mean? One thing they took and they mentioned is that, you know, the Coach Beam ain't gonna change. He's been that way forever. His way has worked. It has won championships and even more. So huge fan of Coach Beam. I really, really am. I just wish that there was a few times where, you know, he could have given a little bit more positive reinforcement or said more good things about his players. Definitely was a hard ass for sure a couple times, but nonetheless, shout out to Coach Beam. I think he did a pretty good job with these boys. And I feel like when it was all said and done, Dior, Nu'u, RJ, all these guys, Rez John, they ultimately have a pretty good respect for Coach Beam. I will say that when it comes to counseling, I feel that a lot of these young men have a lot of issues, and I feel that's where Coach Beam really comes into play, is talking to these kids. But when it comes to football, he's cut and dry. He'll tell you if you suck right to your face, you know, kind of thing. So, but nonetheless, he coached for 40 years. They talk about his reputation towards the end of the very last episode, episode 8, but also as well episode 1 as well too. So, and while there's a couple episodes where it seems like they're kind of ultimately hinting about his retirement, they even bring on a guy who used to ultimately be in the NFL, and now he does real estate for a living. I think it was episode 7 or 8. He hangs around for those 2 episodes. And even for him, you know, he's kind of saying, hey, Coach Beam used to not be this way. He used to be a lot different, you know. So to take and see, and from my perspective, I could see where maybe Coach Beam used to be a lot more different. He used to be a lot more harder, but more compassionate. And it seems like he may be losing his touch, you know. But nonetheless, definitely my favorite coach throughout the course of the entire series, okay? Now that being said, you know, RJ Stern, Nu'u Tagaval, Rez John Wright, and then also Dior Walker, you know, these guys all are going to have a great future. All of them are going to go on to play college football. As far as if I could predict anybody going to the NFL, obviously a lot can happen. But the number one person who stands out against everybody is Rez John Wright. Again, 6'3", 185 specimen of a man. Just the only thing is, like, he does a lot of this. He does a whole lot of talking, and his mouth got him in trouble quite a few times, you know. And there was times where he would he would take and say, yeah, no one's ever scored a touchdown on me all season, and then the guy would score touchdowns. So he tends to end up putting too much pressure on himself, and then on top of that, he has kind of the emotional instability with his father being lost, which I don't know too many people who would be stable after losing their father as well too. You know, it's pretty difficult. But I like Rez John. I think that he's going to go very, very far. As far as Dior, man, he's hungry. I mean, the guy was couch surfing forever. You know what I mean? And eventually he did get a place. I think it was I think it was episode 6, I believe it was, where, you know, the counselor ended up finding a place for him to live, kind of thing. But now that, you know, he has when you have a place to live, like sleep, a bed, stability in your life, you can now take your efforts and focus them elsewhere. Also as well, living in Hawaii, for Dior, he's not gonna have to worry about that crazy traffic. You got Hawaii traffic now, but it ain't Bay Area traffic. You know, let's just be clear. And then everything's on campus where you need it. You're at an actual university. You're not at some small-time JUCO school. So Dior, that guy, if he balls out, man, I think he'd at least get an NFL tryout. RJ as well too, man. RJ, I felt like I wanted to see more of him. You know, episodes 3, 4, 5, and you really didn't see him on the field, coach will rip. You make one mistake, you're out of there. Like, you're out, you're gone, bye. But when he was in there, the guy got touchdowns. I think at one point in the season, they said that for every 3 catches he gets, it's a touchdown. You know what I mean? So I think throughout the whole season, I think he had like 4 or 5 touchdowns, but the guy is a baller, and he doesn't have bad height. I mean, he's 5'11", 185. I mean, the guy can do his thing, you know what I mean? And while there's a few mechanical things, again, I feel like Coach Beam could have highlighted what he's doing right, because he does something right to get touchdowns, you know what I mean? So, but RJ Wright, like him a lot. I think he's gonna go very far. I do think he definitely has D1 talent. I was really hoping that, at least a 1AA school would hit him up, but I've never heard of Tusculum before, but I have heard of Adams State, which did ultimately give him a visit. That was the RMAC division, which is where I ultimately ended up taking and playing at. They spanked our butt. I played for New Mexico Highlands University. That was brutal. And then the last person I want to take and talk about before we finish up is Nu'u Tagabao. He ended up going to Murray State, and his wife and kids, they're all getting, again, reoccurring theme throughout the whole season, is that his whole family's going to end up going with him down to Middle Tennessee, over playing for Murray State. That was a really, really cool, because he comes from a family of college football players, guys who went 1AA, guys who went Division II, He comes from a family of ballers. It's in his lineage, One thing I liked about his story is that, he's Tongan, he's Pacific Islander, Polynesian kid, and was really neat to see from that perspective is that, with him, family means a lot, but because family means a lot, there's a lot of poverty where he currently lives at in Oakland. So for them to move to Tennessee and for the family to be supportive, as I said again with Dior, he's going to take and be able to focus more on, the academic side. And do I think he's going to go to NFL? If he could take and really have the work ethic to do so and not have to worry about money and where your next meal's going to come from, and you got your wife working and going to school while you're going to school and playing football, I would definitely hope so. I see nothing but good things for all of these guys. So, but anywho, love the season. If I had to give it 1 out of 10, I definitely give it a 10. It shows a perspective of college football that you've never seen before. You see the big schools, the Oregon, they get a New Jersey, sometimes multiple times a season. You see the USCs, University of Florida, Alabama, all these different schools, but there's a grind to get to there. And not everybody who makes it to those schools had the best grades. Therefore, they had to stop at schools like junior colleges. Back when I used to play college football for New Mexico Highlands, I played tight end over there. It was number 93. Had a really good time, but I met a lot of friends who play for JUCO, and I never heard of JUCO in my life. I'll be honest with you, I've never, ever heard of JUCO. Then I started finding out, some of these guys went to school in Kansas. Some of these guys went to school over in Mississippi. Some of these guys went to school at JUCOs in Alabama, Texas, California. They're all over the nation. So to take and see these guys get a shot at a team is really, really, really freaking cool, man. So, but it does take and show that side. I also like that they show the personal life. They show that also Coach Beam is a grandfather as well too. He has grandkids who love him and everything like that, I also like that they show that some of the politics that really come into play, from the cost of living to gentrification to even homeless students as well too, who still go to class, get good grades, and who still take and perform on the field as well too. So to see all those different perspectives in one, it's they have reality TV ends up being fake, but this is as real as it gets. I give this 2 thumbs up, 10 out of 10 stars, whatever the heck you want to call it. Best show ever. Overall, y'all, I really love this season. Out of season 1, 2, 3, and 4, and dealing with, having coaches who sometimes said racist things, having coaches who were absolutely abusive to their players, seeing coaches absolutely melt down, it was really, really nice to see Coach Beam generally hold it together. And I feel like when it was all said and done, Dior, Nu'u, RJ, all these guys, Rez John, they ultimately have a pretty good respect for Coach Beam. It shows a perspective of college football that you've never seen before. You see the big schools, the Oregon, they get a New Jersey, sometimes multiple times a season. You see the USCs, University of Florida, Alabama, all these different schools, but there's a grind to get to there. And not everybody who makes it to those schools had the best grades. Therefore, they had to stop at schools like junior colleges. Back when I used to play college football for New Mexico Highlands, I played tight end over there. It was number 93. Had a really good time, but I met a lot of friends who play for JUCO, and I never heard of JUCO in my life. I'll be honest with you, I've never ever heard of JUCO. Then I started finding out, like, yeah, some of these guys went to school in Kansas. Some of these guys went to school over in Mississippi. Some of these guys went to school at JUCOs in Alabama, Texas, California. They're all over the nation. So to take and see these guys get a shot at a team is really, really, really freaking cool. Also like that it showed that some of the politics that really come into play, from the cost of living to gentrification to even homeless students as well too, who still go to class, get good grades, and who still take and perform on the field as well too. So to see all those different perspectives in one, it's you know, they have reality TV ends up being fake, but this is as real as it gets. I give this 2 thumbs up, 10 out of 10 stars, whatever the heck you want to call it. Best show ever. Now, also as well, the head director, Greg Whitley, did say that this is going to be the last season. So while I was definitely in a rush to get this to you guys, I really wanted to take my time with this. So it was a little tough. That's why I spread it over the course of 2 days, even though it came out about 4 days ago. But Greg Whitley is still looking on continual Last Chance University, just not with football. So not exactly what I wanted to hear, to be honest with you guys. I look forward on watching more of his work to see the basketball perspective. I personally have been a part of the football perspective and to see it on TV, and for him to bless us with that, it's been super duper cool. So Greg Whitley, man, I appreciate you. I salute you, brother, because, man, if you to show that perspective, to bring it to life with real people, no script, just raw, uncut. The tears were real, the injuries were real, the storylines were real. There was nothing fake about it. You know what I mean? These are all real people. There's been real people that come from this show end up going to the NFL. So look forward on, you know, hopefully the show coming back. I'm hoping and praying. Maybe he'll feel really guilty in like 2 years. You know, they'll just bring it back. But with basketball, it is going to continue on. This is the last one for football. Don't want to ramble on anymore, guys, but love the show, man. Really a dang shame that it's going. So all the young men on the show, anybody else I forgot to mention, man, all y'all did great, man, and hope and pray all the blessings for you guys. All you guys go and kill it and whatever you do. Anywho, that's another episode of The Touchdown. Make sure you guys subscribe. Thanks for watching. Hit that like button. Hit that little bell there for reminders. Thanks for watching.
Touchdown! Touchdown!